Hello, hello. I'm Dr. Jacob Larson, and in this video, I wanted to kind of model some things that some of my concerns have. Sorry, some of my students have been having concerns with. They've been voicing concerns with being able to think critically while using AI. So I thought I could kind of demonstrate how someone might actually use AI as part of uh, a workflow that requires critical thinking, for example. Okay, so here we go. I have been working on developing some apps lately, so I have a couple of ideas for developing a web app. Real quickly, that might help address some of these things, and I'm just going to talk as I walk through it. I'm going to explain some things about how AI works while I, all live, hopefully without some editing, use Claude and Google Gemini to put together a project. Okay, so the idea is this: we're going to build a citation checker app that can help people make sure that when say AI has found a source or they found a source, that it's an actual source, and maybe help to cite things correctly too. And here's some of the things I'm going to do as long as the process. Okay, so that's what my sticky notes are for. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Gemini right here, and I'm going to ask it to do some deep research. I'm going to get it started, and then I'm going to explain some background about it while it's doing that, and then I'm going to use the information from that to start working on developing the app. Okay, so first, I need some sources to check. I'm going to open up Gemini and ask it to do some deep research. Okay. Okay. So simple prompt. Please conduct a literature review on how using AI may be affecting the cognition and learning abilities of college students. That's one of the concerns, right? Is if I use AI, I'm going to get stupid. I was trying to explain this to my students the other day that just because you're using AI, that nothing about that inherently makes you stupid. It's it's just understanding how learning works. And so I was explaining to them, you learn what you pay attention to, and if you aren't paying attention to something, well, you're not using your brain, you're not doing whatever. But if you are using your brain as part of a process, then yeah, I mean, you can learn anything. You could just as well be distracted by the attractive person in the class next to you, and you're going to learn about whoever they are or pay attention to those sorts of things. Anyway, it's not it's not magic that AI somehow makes you stupid, and that's something that people misunderstand a lot. Okay, so what's happening right now is I asked Google Gemini to conduct deep research. Deep research is doing a couple different processes, which also inherently help to narrow down and avoid hallucinations. This is another concern a lot of students have. They're like, well, how can you even trust the information that you get? And that is true. You should double check. You should be able to verify and make sure that any information that you're getting from AI is useful. But people also wildly misunderstand how often those mistakes happen and what might cause them in the first place. So, for example, in 2022, when ChatGPT first launched, and we got, I'll scroll down so you can see the progress for what's happening right here. And we first got ChatGPT launching. It didn't have live access to the internet. They had really controlled the training information that it was given for its large language model, and so it when you asked it a question, it was pulling it off of what it already knew. But we also need to understand that a large language model that isn't acting like a search engine as well, which I'll explain in a bit, it's not searching for information to provide an answer. It's using a predictive algorithm to guess, in this context, what is the most likely next word that someone would use in this situation. And so it is averaging all of its training data to produce the next word, then the next word, then the next word, then the next word. That was the core for how large language models helped to enable our generative artificial intelligence and chatbot format. There's a lot that's happened since then to help avoid some of those problems, but how that leads to made up or fake information is because it's not searching for an answer and then giving you an answer based on that. It's just saying what's the most likely next word. And if the training data is consistent, maybe it gives you an accurate response. But if the training data is kind of all over the place or not specific enough, then it's going to produce something that looks like a citation because that's what you asked it to do. It's mimicking writing in a way. And so that's why it might produce something that looks like a citation, but it made up the words because it's just like it made up the other words before it and its explanation, which doesn't mean that's not accurate. But when it comes to a citation, it didn't go find information. It just produced a response that is an average of what it's been trained on. Okay, I hope that made sense. Scroll down a little bit more. So I hope that made sense. Where that's a problem when it comes to academia is if you're just asking an older model of ChatGPT or one like it, to write a paper for you, it's going to write a paper, but the sources will be made up. But it wasn't that long after November 2022 that we started giving live access to the internet to these large language models, these chatbots like ChatGPT. And so what it then did is it combined two activities. It used search to go find the information, and it's similar to what's happening here right now. Is this done? This might be done now. Okay, so that's done. And so what it would do is it would go search the internet, which, it's not new technology, and then it would use how its ability to read text as a large language model to read the pages that it was given and then be able to keep track of where the information is coming from, synthesize the data, and then produce a response using its generative intelligence. But it's narrowed down to specific sources that it knows where the content came from, so it can then tell you this is where that information came from, which was one of the biggest gaps in early academic use of generative artificial intelligence. And it avoids it making up sources, which is the hallucination problem, right? What I did is something similar with deep research just now, and that I asked it, here's a prompt, go find sources for me, synthesize them, and come back. And now I've got a list of sources, and I can click on any of these because they're actual web links, and you can see what they are. Like they go places, none of this is hallucinated. And it gave me information here, and a lot of models will do something like this. I can use this drop down, and it can tell me where the information for that paragraph came from. There may not be direct quotes per se, but I can look up and I can say, all right, here's some source information that applied to that. It's not looking the exact same as an academic literature review, but in some cases, like I've got this 4 right there. I've got my footnotes, which, it's starting to do some of that work to look a little bit closer. Okay, so in theory, nothing in this deep research literature review should have been hallucinated, because it went and it found a bunch of sources, it read it, it synthesized it, and the only thing it made up was its synthesis, but the synthesis is based off of these specific sources, so the likeliness of an error is really low. But let's say I'm in a situation, maybe not an academic situation, where I want to trust the information that just came up. In this case, I can click on the links, and it's going to pop up, and it's going to tell me, okay, that's a real source right there. That popped up. I'm finding real sources. That makes it real easy. But in the event that you have to double check to make sure that a source exists, you may want an app like what we're about to build. Okay, so now we're going to move over to Claude, and I'm going to ask Claude to help us write a web app, okay, to help address this sort of problem. All right, let's see if it's going to work for me or not, or if I've got to switch over to something else. Okay. All right, this is a prompt I would typically write something like this. You can give it a sort of a persona. Imagine you are a software engineer, with experience in SaaS products or something like that, and educational technology. I don't know, something like that. Okay, I need help writing an app called Citation Checker. The purpose of the app is to A, help researchers and students to double check that a source they have is real, and B, to help them to cite the source correctly. All right. Please ask me any clarifying questions that you have. I'd like the app to be accessible and follow WCAG 2.11 AA guidelines. That has to do with things to make it easier for someone to read and stuff like that. Okay, so I hit go. I'm currently using Claude Code right here. There's a lot of tools that Claude, as an AI product, can do, and they keep adding more features, which, as far as we understand, they're built using AI coding software like this. What I'm asking it to do right now is to create a web app, meaning that this isn't like something that necessarily goes on my phone. It lives on the internet, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I think we'll be able to get a preview of it. Okay. Now, a little bit about vibe coding, so that we kind of understand what this is. Vibe coding is kind of like what you see me doing here, in that I come up with an idea. I go to my AI agent that can help write something for me, and I'm asking it to do a task. I have to understand enough of the process to understand what it can do, and when there's a mistake, as I provide judgment and guidance as the human in the loop in this process. Just a second. Yeah, let's just do that. Okay, so it's going to go, and it's like, what do you need me to do? I said, all right, let's make sure we can do APA, MLA, Chicago style, and did a couple other things that have to do with what the app needs to do. It has some clarifying questions, and now it's working. Okay, so vibe coding is just what you saw right there. I had an idea. I came up with it on my sticky notes. Maybe I do some research on the topic to see if it's viable or something I could do. I go to a coding agent and I ask it to get to work. But then I also need to know whether it did what I asked it to do, whether it's getting off track, whether it's solving its purpose. And so this is where the real work starts to begin. I'm not doing the actual coding. The computer, which has been trained on, who knows how much lines of code and different web applications and things like that, it knows how to code, and it knows how to do it incredibly well. And so I'm operating almost like a manager in this process. I am managing the agent that is doing the coding for me. Now, am I doing any critical thinking? I'm not doing the critical thinking of writing the lines of code, but I am doing the problem solving of, okay, now that I have something to work with, is it doing what I want it to do? And how do I communicate that with the AI to help accomplish my goals? And so now I enter a sort of problem solving mode where my job is to work with the AI as I manage it and I review it and I send it back to do more work until we polish it to the kind of product that we need it to be. Okay, so you can watch the progress of it. It gives you some lines of its progress. I can open up some of these drop-down menus if I want to see some more specifics about what's happening. What it's doing in the background is it's writing some code that's operating in one of my repos, which is kind of a place to store saved code. I should have changed that setting. But I can open up and I can see what it is. When it's talking about running a command, there's a terminal prompt, a virtual terminal prompt that it's operating from. This is giving me some process. It's talking about some of the features that are being built into it. It's kind of working things up. It's telling me what it's doing. That's working. That's where we're saving some of this stuff. And so you have to know, and I didn't know how to write code before I started doing this. This is simply by me paying attention and learning as we try to problem solve. I've learned a lot about coding, but I still can't do it by myself. But also, even if I could, it would be incredibly slow compared to what the AI can do. It can write features really, really fast. And yes, if I had a coding background, it would really improve my ability to do this, but it's not required because the AI knows the coding. I just need to know the product that I'm trying to create, and I can manage it as it works on it. Okay, so it's getting some of this put together. You'll see some things down here. This is how long it's been working on it. These are how many tokens it's used, and it's giving me some progress on there. So you see it's used 2.4 thousand tokens. That's actually really, it's not a lot of tokens. It's kind of on the low side, which is a little surprising, I think. What I think will happen, once it finishes building this, we should be able to see a preview. Maybe not immediately, but we should get a very skeleton version of what the app can look like. Okay. It's building in some of the stuff. Now, it's clearly had to go search some of this information. It's not operating clearly from like trained data. It went and it had to look up some of the things I'm talking about. It's looking up DOIs, ISBNs, URLs. It looked up different citation styles. It's making sure that things can, it's using the databases for Crossref and Open Library to be able to verify that a citation is correct. It's pulling into different sort of coding libraries. TypeScript is stuff for text. Next.js. Oh, I may need to host this. That's kind of like a way for structuring an app that's going to be hosted on a website and things like that. So these are all things I've learned from doing this not because I knew them before I started working with apps like this. Okay, so that's been going for about 7 minutes now. When I did my research beforehand, I don't know how long this one took. I'm not sure. But it gave me some content to work from, some resources, plus it's relevant to our topic. And maybe we'll go over that in a second. Okay. All right. Okay, now it jumped and it's used, another like 5,000 tokens. Tokens kind of represent, it's not always consistent what a token equals, but it's probably how much text it's written. That's not a completely accurate way to put it, but that's kind of what's happening. You'll see these numbers that pop up here, the plus 244 minus 0 plus, that's how much code it's written or how much it's deleted. So the red is deletion, the green is what it's written. So, if this is everything, it's written a few hundred lines of code is what it's done, which isn't all too much. But, I mean, in 8 minutes, it's written hundreds of lines of code. See the difference between like me doing it. Now, if I was a programmer, I might go to a place and copy some code in to kind of get me started to build from some of these libraries, but it's it's able to pull things and write it or revise it, and it can read incredibly quickly, and it can see where the problems are, and it can run the code, and it can see that that's not working. It can go back and it can fix it. So oftentimes when I'm vibe coding like this, I can work on something else. Now, if we're talking about critical thinking, what does that mean? How engaged in this process am I? I don't have to watch this constantly. I could be working on something else, which is great. But definitely when I'm actively engaged with each step of this process, I have to pay attention to it. There's no other way to do it than to look at it, look at the app, run the app, make sure, okay, this is working the way that I want it to. This is not working the way that I want it to. I'm testing it. That doesn't look right. I don't like how that's, set up on the page. I don't like the UI. I don't like the colors. I don't like the fonts. Those are all different things that I can adjust later once we get something. But right now, we're just trying to get a working prototype in place, and then we can start testing it to see how well it works. If you pay close attention to it, it's talking about the different features which are relevant to the app that we're doing. It's showing how much code has been written, but it's talking about different files that it's also writing and adjusting. These are going to be like style settings across the app and how things are arranged and formatted. There's a lot of different ways to do vibe coding, and I don't know that there's a correct way to do it. This is one way to do it when I'm not at home. My favorite way to do it right now is I'll work directly with like Claude or ChatGPT. I jump back and forth between both of them. I'll have the program that they use to actually run the app, which I could write code into, but I don't, to render and to run the app. But what I like to do is I like to be on my home computer where the code is housed on the actual computer itself instead of like in a digital cloud storage space like this one is. And it's able to get actual access to all the different files that I've given it permission to. And then I could just observe the app as it's making changes. It's the most effective way, I think, for what I've been doing. All right, so we're up to 11 minutes, 14,000 tokens as it continues to build it. When it's writing what's called a monolithic app, and it's just one big file, it'll be able to preview it. This is writing a bunch of different files, so I don't know if we're going to be able to preview this with the setup that I have right now once it's done. But this is what vibe coding looks like. At least one way to do it. Okay. While this is doing a little bit more, let's pull up that research report. This I used Google because of how long it takes. It can go do deep research without taking forever. I find that ChatGPT, when I ask it to do deep research, it takes a lot longer. It might be more thorough, but it takes a lot longer, and I didn't want to take forever for what we were doing. Gemini is Google's AI product, their brand. And it also can sync over to some of their other products like Notebook. And with content like this, you can create a bunch of other different products with it. Like if I took this and I took it over to Notebook, it would be able to create like a podcast from this and give me a summary and things like that, which is nice. I hear these better than I read them because there's a lot of words on the page here. So what I like to do would probably be open it up just in a Word document. In this case, Google Docs. And then I like to do read aloud to listen to it. That's just personally how I like to deal with deep research, because then I've created a podcast for myself, and I'm not sure where read aloud might be built within Google Docs because I don't use it that often anymore, but it is built into the browser. So I'm in you should be able to hear it when it starts going. Okay, so I can read the page. Let's see if it starts. Read aloud is often built into browsers so that you can have the page read to you. It's an accessibility feature, which is fantastic. It's not working the way that I want it to work right now. I wonder if I could do it from here. Drop.
Please conduct a literature.
Okay, now it's working.
The integration of generative artificial intelligence, GenAI, into higher education represents a structural shift in how university students access, process, and construct knowledge. Large language models, multimodal generative agents, and domain-specific AI tutors have transitioned rapidly from novel supplements.
Okay, so that's one tool that you can use if you're trying to get something to do this. Now, is that AI reading it to me? I mean, there's some programming built into it. That's a pretty good voice that Microsoft has. It's a lot better than a stock voice, which it does a pretty good job of reading it. Okay, so it gave us a screenshot for what it's starting to look like right now. Citation checker, and it's a simple web app. This right here is how you know that it's running Next.js. Okay, so that's nice. It put in an ISBN number, checked it, said it's not found, and what it's doing is it's checking it against a couple different databases, and if that number doesn't show up, it says it doesn't exist. So that's what's doing right there. Now it's checking night mode. That's part of the WCAG 2.118A, which is some sort of guideline system for accessibility. So there's a nighttime mode that it's putting together, and so you can see that it's got a lot together, and now it's starting to check it a couple different ways. We're up to 20,000 tokens. and 16 minutes of work. It's showing right now what's currently working on. If I click on this, it'll continue to show me what it's doing. Now, I gave it a lot of work to do with this prompt, and I answered some of its questions, and then it had a pretty good idea for what it needed to do next, so it's just working on it. It's not a... Sometimes, depending on what you do, it stops constantly to ask you, should I do this, should I do this, should I do this? And it doesn't always run consistently for this long, but it's being productive, and it doesn't really need my help to continue to check on some of these things. It looks like by the time it stops, we should have a pretty good web app for double checking whether citations exist. Now, the reason why I wanted to build this is the kind of product you would probably want to use if you're using AI to help find sources for you. So let's say I open up Copilot and I say, can you find me a peer-reviewed study on how using generative AI is affecting students. This again is going to search because it's got that ability to search the internet, and so it started to pull up some sources. In this case, it gave me something from Wood and Moss from 2024. It gave me a citation. It gave me a link that I could double check with the app, and it started to summarize it and gave me some key findings. Now, as the human in the loop, I can just trust this, but I should probably double check it. But understanding how this particular AI is structured to work, I can click on these links. And I know that the article exists. And I can double check it against this, but it's not hard to find out that, okay, it didn't make this up. It's doing exactly what it was supposed to do. So, I have no reason to doubt this source. Here's another one. Again, this is another real place that it took me to, using, the kinds of sources and people you'd expect to find. Yeah, for sure. This is all real stuff, which is good. But if I was using a local model or one that isn't working this way with the ability to search the internet, I might have to worry about hallucinations. But you also have to understand the tool that you're working with, if it has those limitations or not. But you should always double check. It's always a good idea. But this, again, is an example for what coding looks like, trying to solve a problem. Using AI can look like, double checking it. And so I've used Google Gemini, I've used Microsoft Copilot, I've used Claude Code. They all help to verify different things. They're doing slightly different tasks for each other. I've had sources write up a literature review for me before, and then I've taken it into another AI and run it through that. And the odds that they would hallucinate on the same thing are so incredibly low. That's one way to make sure that, it's probably nothing is made up. And then, I've done it over like 4 different AI products, and they're like, oh, I think you're a little too strong on this point, you're a little too weak on this one. And so they rewrite each other, which is kind of interesting. And you get to something at the end that would have taken, a human weeks or months to put together, and it can do it, well, pretty quickly. Now, the question of whether that's useful to you is something else. But the thing I wanted to address, and what we were talking about today, is what critical thinking looks like when you're using AI, and also whether we can trust this, whether we really have to worry about hallucinations. And you shouldn't stop worrying, but maybe some of our fear is we're worrying more because we don't completely understand how it works. And as you understand more how it works and you're able to see it and double check it. And for the record, my doctorate's in educational technology. So like I'm researching something that I know, so I know what actual research looks like. I'm familiar with it. And so I use that as an example. And it's real easy to tell this is real stuff that we're working with. These aren't made up, these aren't hallucinated. This all looks very, very good. And what's going on here? Okay, well, let's go back to see our progress here. All right, so it stopped. It wrote 19,000 lines of code, and all of that. And summary, it built an app. These are all different, the structures, what they call the stack for how it built it. Doesn't require accounts, and it's not going to save anything. It's just going to run off of your local computer's web browser. It can check for DOI, which is like your permanent, your permalink for academic research. ISBN, which is a book's specific identifier, and URL, its link. It can cite and help you cite with APA 7, MLA 9, Chicago. And it's double checked for accessibility. And it talks a little bit about one of the things it did is it also tested the app. It ran 38 different tests on the functionality of the app, and then it's starting to give me some ideas for what can happen next. And that's a pretty normal process when I'm working with it. If I've given it a list, sometimes I'll go through an app, I'll workshop an idea for a while. It'll come up with a list of what the big features for the app should be, and then port it over, and I'll have another AI write something with it. And then, so you might do a chunk of work and then it'll be like, great, let's move on to phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4. And then I just, I check in and I'm double checking as it goes. In this case, it was able to do the whole thing in one shot, which, because of the size of what we were asking it to do is possible. Not every app can be just done all at once. But you saw it took, 20-something minutes, and it built a complete web app, which has functionality. I would have to actually take this code and host it to a website to check it further, so I can't show it to you right now, unfortunately, because of the way that I went about writing it. If I was on my desktop computer, this might be a little bit different. I'm just asking it, can you launch the app? Oh, let's see. It's checking. It's checking what it can do. It didn't work the first time. It's doing something here. One thing I like to do, because of the Claude app on your phone, like sometimes I'm traveling, I'm on a weekend trip with my family or something like that, and my wife always drives because it helps with her car sickness, and I might do something on my phone and work on an app or something like that. I just previewed it, but it didn't run it. Yeah. One thing you may be thinking is like, how much critical thinking did I do as part of this? Well, critical thinking isn't just one specific thing. I have to dig into the app and look at it and say, okay, this is what I wanted it to do. How well is it doing it? I can test it, I can double check it. And even though it's done this, okay. So it's just showing me some of the previews for what the app looks like. Oops. So this is your basic page. You would type in the source link, and then it would run it to double check it. And it shows a result where an ISBN number wasn't real, it didn't work, which tells you it's not a real ISBN number, and then it shows it in dark mode as well. So even though we weren't able to run it, it showed us some pictures for what it would look like. Anyway, a little more on critical thinking. If I wasn't running this out of a web browser, which is what I'm doing right now, I would spend a little more time double checking it, actually running it. And if I'm happy with it, I could run it. Like, this is probably far enough along that from here, I could actually send it over to my web hosting service, Hostinger, and I can push this to a place to save it, and then I can pull that into the actual host site. So we could probably launch this thing if we took enough time to do it. But that's not the point for what I wanted to cover today. I wanted to explain how generative AI works in general, how you can go about solving a task with it. Now, if I was just a coder, this would take me a lot longer than 20 minutes. We've been talking for how long? 41 minutes? It would take longer than 41 minutes to build this app from, to one-shot it like this. And in order to double check it and run, nearly 48 tests for accessibility and functionality and things like that, that takes a lot longer to do. And this is kind of the beauty of it, is if I have a problem that I want to solve, that I've observed, and I know enough about what the technology can do, I can communicate with it in language that I'm familiar with. I'm just writing in English, and it understands it well enough that it can run with it. Now, I've explained some really technical things along the way, and I'm not perfect. I'm not a software engineer. I have two brothers who are, but I am not. And yet, I was able to build something with help from the AI, and I can manage it from here. So this is what's possible, that you're able to take a problem, understand what it would take to solve it, use the tools to solve it, and here you go. All right. Well, thanks for checking this video out. I hope that this is illustrative for what the process might look like. There's infinite ways for how you might do something like this, but I just want to model how I might do it in the situation. So thanks for checking this out. I hope this was helpful for you.